What history have you made?
Seaman Miles, front and center. That was the piercing sound of my name ringing out over an amplified speaker in front of a crowd of over maybe 200 proud U.S. sailors. So I stood at attention, trembling and nervous, standing within the ranks of ship's company. See, some of you might know me today as Andrea Homer, Chief of RM Sacramento District. But 23 years ago, before I was married, I was an E3 Seaman Miles aboard a foreign deployed ship, the USS O'Brien, DD 975. Listen, there was no time to even put away my clothes in the coffin-sized rack. I just came back from Japan, about a 12-hour flight, and got there just in time to help bring on supplies. So line up, they shouted. You don't get any special treatment. You don't get any special privileges. I was shocked, but nobody looked like me, and they could tell I was nervous. See, at that moment, I was far away from the city lights of Los Angeles, standing around the towered cranes and the heavy machinery. And that day, it seemed like I was towered by the strength of others and by their experience. So I stood in what seemed to be like an assembly line to bring on board the food for our next deployment. And on comes one box they hand me after another, and the supplies started coming in. And they go from being handed to me to now coming in at rapid speed and being tossed to me. But now at this point, I had something to prove. So I rolled up my sleeves, wiped the sweat from my brow, and one box comes in after another. They go from handing it to me to now almost tossing it to me. And of course, by this time, I had something to prove, so I wasn't going to allow any of those boxes to fall to the ground. After all, from this point, I was the only girl that I had seen. So the boxes came in, and after the boxes come the supplies, and then it seemed like rows of pallets with 20-gallon paint buckets. And hours later, I get a stern grin that says, not too bad for your first working party. Yeah, but make sure that you come back in an hour. You get a break, but we'll see you soon. So then I ran down the sets of stairs below the water line to get a sip to drink from what we knew as the women's berthing quarters. And I noticed, so there's only 30 bunks, and of which half were empty. Then I walked by and I noticed 2 open bay showers. I remember thinking, what in the world did I sign myself up for? So I sat down on the bottom rack and I caught my breath. I remember having the achy arms, and suddenly, boom, the door swings open, and finally another woman. So we introduced ourselves and I asked, hey, where's everyone else? She replied, I think there's only 15 of us, and we might get a few more, but before we deploy next week, I think we are it. So I thought to myself, over 200 men. And you know what? Right then it hit me. We were the first women aboard this ship. Wow. For the first time, I remember hearing the acronym of Navy, right? Never again volunteer yourself. It's just an inside joke. You see, what I didn't know back then, at that very moment, I was making history. So at the age of 19, back in February of 1999, I was a part of the 7th Fleet Battle Group, whom just started integrating women aboard our ship. And guess what? You guessed it. I was one of the first women to serve. And what happened to those men who had never worked with women? Many who never worked with a woman since they came out of high school. Now they were serving over 20+ years. I'm glad you asked that question. See, because from that point, we stood watch together, we protected one another, defended our country from enemies both foreign and domestic, together. And those men, they became family. I had uncles, mentors, advisors, and coaches, even at sea. So we even participate in a time-honored Navy tradition dating back over 400 years when you cross the equator. And together, we made history. So this was given to me at a ceremony that took place on the equator in transition from being what's called a WOG to becoming what's called a shellback. And thank goodness that ceremony happened before the days of social media. You could imagine it was quite the time. And later, I was even recognized as being the top sailor for the quarter. And remember, that was out of over 3,000 within our entire battle group. That recognition made me so proud, and most of all, you wouldn't believe those same men, they're the ones who nominated me for this achievement. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I became one of the first African-American women to serve aboard the mighty O'Brien, USS DD 975. And that is how I made history.